Learn more about what it takes for first responders to be prepared for emergencies, from small individual crises to large community-wide events such as the recent tornado outbreak. We'll be talking with the first responders of Posey County next on WNIN Newsmakers. Welcome, I'm Noah Alatza, the Chief Communications Officer at the University of Evansville. Even in small communities, residents depend upon first responders to help in times of need. Here to talk about the overall response in Posey County is Carrie Thompson. She's the director of the Posey County Emergency Management Agency. Thank you so much for joining us today, Carrie.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you making time. So obviously, Posey County was hit with 2 tornadoes just in the past 6 months, as we were talking just moments ago, one in April and, of course, the most recent in July. So, Carrie, can you just talk to us, particularly for our viewers at home who might not understand what an emergency management agency necessarily does? Walk me through some of those just critical components that you do on a day-to-day basis.
So a lot of what emergency management is, so there's 5 key areas that we focus on, and it's preparing, prevention, mitigation, response, and recovery. So, if you break those down, it's just trying to prepare the best we can for anything that may come along. And as you know, we don't know from day to day what that's going to be. We know what the major stuff is. You've got tornadoes or thunderstorms or river flooding. So we try to prepare plans ahead of time that can assist us in the response and the recovery in those situations. So, of course, everything's different. We don't know what's coming or what to expect. So sometimes you take bits and pieces of those plans and you have to modify them. They're fluid documents. So you have to modify them, and sometimes after the fact you realize that didn't work and maybe we need to change it.
And how best do you prepare? What goes into that planning process?
Oh gosh, just research, experience. A lot is learned out of these plans based on things that have happened, real world events. So, we've had 2 tornadoes this year, and there's things that I've learned that may or may not be in these plans that I know moving forward that I need to have access to right now in the moment just to be able to do my job better.
Residents, obviously, that suffer damage or any type of that, they look to you and your organization often in times of trouble, right, or in an emergency. Mm-hmm. How do you best equip them or prepare those residents before something strikes in Posey County?
Well, I think the best thing we can do is just put information out there. We use social media. We use Facebook a lot. So we try to push information during not even necessarily just severe weather-related events. During different weeks of the year, there's, severe weather week, and we just try to push information out. So you can never have too much information. Sometimes it's hard to process that, but we try to put stuff out there that people are going to remember, that may help them react and respond better if and when something were to happen.
Sure, it's all about that proactiveness, I'm sure, particularly in your profession. Let's talk about, though, I want to go back to those tornadoes that struck Posey County in July. What kind of warning did you have there that the tornadoes might have been happening that day? What kind of intelligence, what kind of assessment do you do when you're constantly monitoring the weather, things of that nature?
We rely a lot on the National Weather Service out of Paducah, and they are great about giving us information and sending us briefings regularly. So we might know a couple days in advance that this might be coming. So in the instance of the last tornado, with it being the remnants of a hurricane, they started putting information out several days in advance. And as the events got closer, they updated those several times a day. They do online briefings, like virtually. They send PDF files that show us, and they're very good about staying in touch. And that afternoon, actually, I had gotten off work, and I actually received a phone call from an associate at the National Weather Service office stating that there was a tornado on the ground in Kentucky, and if it continues on its path, it's headed straight for you.
Wow. And at that moment, what's going through your mind?
Well, it would be inappropriate for me to say on the air. But it was you're getting your thoughts together. What do I need to do next? And so I had my phone I wasn't at home. I had my phone in my pocket. I was listening to the weather and basically just prepared to jump into action if and when something were to develop.
And obviously tornadoes happen so quickly. They can happen rather quickly,
Yes.
just like the one that we're talking about in July. What happens then for first responders next? How does your agency mobilize the appropriate resources?
So our big, the way we're involved during and after a tornado or any major event is we're not necessarily the first on scene. Our role is to assist the responders with the resources they need. So while I may show up on scene, it's more in an effort to, what do you need from me? So my job is to help them if they need additional state resources or resources that I have. It may be hauling a trailer to where they're at, or a mobile command center, or, requesting drones from other areas. Basically, if they need something that is not available to us within the county, I may be able to help them secure that.
Carrie, what is the most challenging part of your job when it comes to terms of dealing with these type of emergencies? Is it the unknown? What do you find the most challenging?
Sometimes it is. In the last two, honestly, it's you know what to do in the moment, but it's jumping into action and then gathering your thoughts collectively and organizing everything and know what to do from that point forward. It's figuring out where the assistance is needed. So damage assessment is a big part of our response during a tornado. Sometimes that comes after. It's not immediate. It's the last tornado, there was a trailer park that was affected, and I ended up out at the trailer park with the Red Cross, coordinating a shelter, seeing who needed some place to go for the night. But it's every situation is different.
Sure. Where is the community today in terms of recovery?
There's still, there are still some people who are looking for, long-term homes. Their homes were destroyed. We had a trailer park that the majority of those homes were destroyed as part of the storm. So some are still able to live there, some are not. The biggest, I think, recovery effort at this point is for the warehouse Kenco that was hit. They're taking care of a lot of that recovery, I believe, on their own. I know there's been other businesses locally that have, reached out in efforts to help place some of those employees that currently don't have any work.
And people that still are left picking up the pieces. Talk to me, Carrie, about some of these low-interest disaster loans and how could people potentially apply for them if they are available to individuals in need?
We currently have a disaster loan outreach center that is opened directly behind my office. It's at 311 Mill Street. They are there Monday through Friday from 9 to 6, Saturday 10 to 2. So any of these residents that still are looking to receive additional assistance, they can stop in there. They can talk to there's a disaster loan specialist. They can talk to them. They'll help them through the application process. If anybody's not able to make it to that outreach center, because the last day they are open in person is this Saturday, the 10th. But beyond that, they can still apply online through September 23rd.
How do people in Posey County stay up to date with what's going on with your agency?
At this point, mostly, they're welcome to call, but we put a lot of things on. We try to post everything on Facebook. If it's something big, we try to send out news releases. Basically, just get out in the public, newspaper, every way we can to try and cover every avenue.
All right. Well, Carrie Thompson with the Posey County Emergency Management Agency, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Our next guests are Posey County Sheriff Tom Latham and the Director of Posey County Dispatch, Jamie Bradford, here to talk about how they prepare for emergencies. Thank you both so much for being here. So first wanted to just kind of start with, just explain to viewers at home kind of what each of your offices do. And Sheriff Latham, let's start with you, just in the grand scheme of things. What do you do in events of an emergency? How do you work closely with different constituents?
Well, actually, we really depend on what the weather forecast is, and then really the dispatch is our eyes and ears, and they're constantly giving us updates on what potential issues we're getting ready to face, and then we try to manipulate our guys to the areas where the impact could take place. Obviously not too close because we can't respond if we're not if we're enabled to do so. So it's really, honestly, you can prepare all you wish, but until it happens and you start digging into the situation to resolve the problem, again, you can only prepare so much until it happens, and then you just go. You just go, and you are able to rely on your training and really your relationships with everybody else throughout the different agencies.
Jamie, talk to me about that collaboration that you have with the Sheriff's Office and Sheriff Latham. How closely are you working together?
We work alongside all of our agencies every day for any situation. In the event of, like he mentioned, the weather events, we work with EMA. They keep us up to date on daily with any incoming weather situations all through the year. We do notify all the agencies, the department heads, just kind of keep them up to date, as well as being the dispatch is the first responder of emergency services. You know, we take the initial call, then we just kind of prioritize and dispatch out from there. So we have communication with all the agencies, police, fire, and EMS that we dispatch for.
Obviously, communication is so critical for both of your roles. Walk me through, though, what are some of the qualities that would make someone a good fit for having a job at the Sheriff's Office or at the dispatch center? And Sheriff Latham, we'll start with you.
Excuse me. So first and foremost, you have to care. It's not about the money. Money obviously is an addition to it, but if you don't have the heart and you don't have the passion to do this, and this is going to come out very blunt, but don't apply. Anyone can do most jobs, but if you don't have that drive to do it well, then I necessarily don't want you.
Jimmy, what about for you? What are some of the qualities that would make for a really good dispatcher, someone in your office?
Same with the sheriff. I mean, everybody can do a job, but dispatching is not for everybody per se. You have to be the one to care. Communication is very important. Speaking, obviously, talking on the phone, and multitasking, because you may be answering the phone and radio at the same time, as well as typing, things like that.
Jamie, take me back to July during that tornado that blew through Mount Vernon. I want you to just kind of walk us through, when do you get the first call? What does that initial dispatch look like? And how does it look on the back end, really, for individuals at home who aren't familiar with how that works?
Yeah, so back in July, we got the first warning. It was around like 3:45, 3:47, I think, time frame. And then we started getting notification from Mount Vernon City police officers about 4:15 time frame that there's a tornado on the ground near CGB, which is just to the south of the Kenco area that was hit. And we started, dispatch actually went down momentarily. We were down, our radios never fully went down, but our computers shut off, came back on. We had a little power blip. It was about 3-minute time frame. And then we dispatched the fire department out, Black Township Fire Department, and then they requested do an all-call through the entire county. And then within a minute of that all-call, Mount Vernon City Fire was en route. So we take the initial calls and then just prioritize and get the information of, what injuries we know of coming off and what's going on.
And Sheriff, what's going through your head at that time? I'm assuming it's all hands on deck for your office.
Yeah, all the deputies that are working at the time, plus the chief deputy and the detective. The chief deputy was out of town at that point, but he was actually out of the country. So anytime we have severe weather coming to our area, my agency knows, all my deputies know that there's a great potential to be called out. Because we're a small rural county, we don't have a lot of deputies on at one time. So during the day, if God forbid something like this ever happened again, that's the best time for it to happen because we have more people out and about. The great thing about Posey County, like I said, we're a small agency, but although our checks are derived from different entities, when something like this happens, everyone comes together. And I'm not talking just emergency personnel, I'm talking civilians, people within the community. Posey County is a very caring, loving, and supportive county. And I've seen this over and over just through my tenure in law enforcement for the last 27 years. When something like this happens on a scale like this, people are just more than willing to help. And I mean, it sends cold chills up my back because it's just great. And until you see it and actually watch it take place, you really can't appreciate it.
And we've seen you on the scene of multiple events, Sheriff, during your tenure. But aside from being physically there, walk me through the other roles that you play in your response to that, the coordination, the collaboration. Walk me through some of that.
Yeah, it's very difficult to coordinate something on a scale like this, especially when you're talking, Posey County is a very large area. And because it's rural, sometimes it's not easy to get to certain locations, especially after tornadic storm where trees are down, power lines are down, and you can't assist people maybe, for a couple miles because trees down blocked on both ends. An example of this is the first tornado that came through this season on Rexing Road. We had to have a portion of that shut down for quite some time. So being able to prepare for it is more of a mental mindset, and then it's collaborating with everyone that's involved. Police and fire, we are always going back and forth. And, but when it comes down to putting the rubber on the road, there is none of that. It's all one mindset, and it doesn't matter if I'm not wearing a fire helmet and turnout gear. That doesn't mean I won't pick up a hose or what. We all do everything together because we know at the end of the day it has to get done. We don't care who does it. We just need to get it done.
And Jamie, the sheriff mentioned there that sometimes it's difficult, right, location-wise, particularly when you don't know the exact path of a storm. What makes your job so challenging then from a dispatch perspective?
I think it'd be more or less, we just get the multiple calls coming in, and we have 6 911 lines and then 5 admin lines, and we only have 2 people working at a time. We have multiple people that came in, and like he said, the community in general, we have, actually this last tornado, we actually had a dispatcher come in who had worked for us previously, showed up with just, what can I do to help? So it's prioritizing those calls and figuring out the areas that need to be impacted. For instance, on the July tornado, we were getting word of possible tornado activity towards the northern end of the county. They were hearing that down on the southern end and were asking, do we need to send anybody? And dispatch was like, we don't have any reports at this time of any damage up there. And I know luckily, I don't think there was much damage inside Posey County. It was more Gibson County during that incident. But it was prioritizing those calls and where to send the responders.
And Sheriff, on that day, how long did it take to respond to everyone who needed assistance, roughly?
I mean, based on the size of our county, minutes, 15, 20 minutes, depending on, where the deputies were at the time of the hit and the impact. And obviously, what really took priority was the factory in Mount Vernon that got hit, and those areas along that particular route. And thank the Lord that, again, because we all work together, the Mount Vernon City Police Department was able and willing to go out and take care of those issues, while the other 2 deputies were able to go throughout the county and search and help those who were in need.
Jamie, I wanted to ask you this. What are ways that residents can help you respond in an emergency?
It's kind of tough because not every call is the same. I mean, I understand it's an emergency to the public, and if you call in, it's an emergency to you. And to us, we have the questions that we ask and just getting the answers that we need. Staying calm. I know it's hard to do because, like I said, it's an emergency to you when you call, and it is to us when we take it. But we just have to stay calm for you to get the answers and get the correct responders en route.
And Sheriff, what about you? What are some ways that residents could help you in your office in times of emergency?
For the most part, honestly, and this is probably going to sound a little gruff, but staying at home. I'm one of those people. who I'm mesmerized. Storms mesmerize me. And I'm the guy that goes out on the back porch and watches, if it's coming, I want to watch it. And so curiosity fulfills a lot of people within the community. But so after the aftermath, 10 times out of 10 times, you're going to have those folks that want to just drive around and look at the damage. And it is interesting, and it's a terrible situation, but at the same time, the curiosity always peaks in most people. But staying out of the way, because most of the time, it's not, those kind of folks that are just driving around aren't the ones that are asking if they can help. They're congesting the roadways and doing those kinds of things. And count it as a blessing, count it as a curse, whatever the case is. I chose a career where I can see this stuff hands on or head on. I can meet it head on and deal with it. So I don't know if you call that a blessing or a curse. I don't know. I call it a blessing, but others may call it a curse. But I think that by your willingness to participate can be multiplied by just making a phone call to someone saying, hey, is there anything I can do? And we can answer that with yes or no, and that's it. But getting out on the roadway and congesting the areas where first responders are trying to respond to other folks, it does cause a little bit of issues, or a lot of issues for us.
I'll tell you, I know there was some damage, but I would say it was a blessing because it really could have been a lot worse on that day. So Posey County Sheriff Tom Latham, Jamie Radford from the Posey County Dispatch, thank you both so much for making time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now joining us is Chief of the Mount Vernon Fire Department, Ryan Riggs. Thank you, Chief Riggs, so much for joining us today. And obviously, we're talking about preparedness in light of a recent tornado in July. We know, though, that fire departments, of course, you respond to fires all the time. But walk me through what you were doing on that day in July, aside from putting out fires. What are some other things that you do in your department?
We knew there were storms were coming, and there were bad storms coming. EMA and dispatch were telling us, and of course we were watching the news. So we knew something was coming between 4 and 5 o'clock. I had gone home at 4 o'clock, made sure my family was safe. And as soon as I knew the tornado had passed where my house was, I took off towards the east side of town where I knew the tornado was coming through.
What's going through your mind at that time as you're headed into town?
You're preparing yourself mentally of what you're going to see, what you need to do. Make sure life safety is number one. You want to make sure you're safe. You want to make sure the people you're trying to help don't get hurt anymore. You want to get a head count, and just make sure that whatever you do, you're doing safely.
What are some of the ways that your department prepares for emergencies like these?
We train constantly. You can't prepare for everything, but we try to train on all aspects of severe weather, flooding, any medical, any fires, whatever the scenario may be, we try to train for it.
Give me some of those examples of what scenarios your department responded to after the tornadoes blew through Mount Vernon?
Well, we had a gas leak, we had a partial collapse of a building, we had a lot of damage, and we wanted to make sure that everyone was accounted for in those buildings, and make sure they were safe. If they needed any medical attention, that we got it to them. Make sure the right people were called for the gas leak to be shut off properly.
And how long, Chief, does it take for you to respond and to help everyone in need? Is it a long process? Is it dependent, I'm assuming, situation, case by case?
It's definitely case by case, but for this one, I was there. I self-dispatched. I knew they were going to be needing help. So I just went ahead and went towards the east side of town. Also, the guys on station were preparing as well. And guys that were off duty were coming in, and we're getting trucks and taking off towards the east side of town.
And most importantly for viewers at home, what are some of the ways that residents can help you in your department when you're responding to emergencies like these?
What really helps is if they stay away from the actual emergency area. If they would like to check on their neighbor, make sure their neighbors are doing okay, if the power goes out, anything like that. If they can contact them, and if if they have an elderly neighbor that needs oxygen, power goes out, they could call dispatch and we can send EMS that way to help them there.
And Chief Riggs, is there a good way that people can stay up to date with what's happening at the Mount Vernon Fire Department?
We have a Facebook page. We try to keep up with that as best we can.
Excellent. Well, Chief Ryan Riggs from the Mount Vernon Fire Department, we thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you.
Thanks to our guest for joining us to learn more about the Posey County First Responders and their work during the recent tornado outbreak. Next week, we'll talk to local school systems about the upcoming school year. I'm Noah Alatza, the Chief Communications Officer at the University of Evansville. Thanks for watching WNIN Newsmakers.